Hi, welcome back to the video novel Deadly Affirmations. We're going to read the second part of the 6th chapter, and I hope you've missed Patience. I'm sure she's missed you. We'll start with Patience getting ready to go out. It's Saturday night in the novel. Here we go. After about 20 minutes, a cleaner Patience walked into the bedroom and over to the dresser. She opened the top drawer and looked. After a quick determination as to what was clean, she grabbed a pair of blue and white chimapon panties and a pair of matching striped thigh-high socks. She closed the drawer and bent to pull up the scanty little nylon thing. She pulled up the socks and then went to the closet, opened the door, and looked at herself in the mirror. After a couple of straightening tugs on the socks, she was satisfied. Patience smiled and reached up to the left side of the closet shelf. Atop two piles of 3 boxes each were 2 wig stands, one holding a vibrantly vermilion Pippi Longstocking wig, complete with long bangs and 2 Medusa-like pigtails that seemed to move by themselves, and the one Patience was looking for, a platinum blonde Enma wig. Well, in second glass, definitely not platinum blonde. No, the hair was made of thin wires of platinum that almost glowed by themselves. When the light shined on it, the wig would positively glare. She carefully took it down. She set the stand on the bedside table and lifted the wig and put it on. A couple of minor adjustments later, she walked to the mirror to look. Good, but she would have to take it off for her makeup. She replaced the wig on the stand and walked to her dressing table. Patience began by penciling her eyes with white eyeliner and then using a shiny sky blue Sephora eyeshadow to extend the frame of her eyes. She made a point to lightly smudge it where the eyeshadow ended. Patience used concealer to hide her freckles and then applied a matte foundation, a shade paler than her skin. Then she applied blue Sephora blush that matched the eyeshadow to her cheeks to accentuate her cheekbones. She examined herself in the mirror and she liked what she saw. Finally, she opened a little box on the table and took out a tube of Rouge d'Or Brilliant Lip Shine in royal red and a tiny flask of L'Artisan Food Absinthe perfume. She opened the little drawer on the right side of the dressing table and pulled out a little plastic box. She set it on the table in front of her and carefully opened it. She couldn't at first decide between the red and green spiral or the golden cat's eye contact lenses. The gold went well, she decided, with the eyeshadow and the blush. Patience carefully applied the lip shine in a little bow. She looked to see that she hadn't missed anything, and then stood up to find the rest of her outfit for the evening. A white long-sleeved cotton button-down blouse. She decided to leave her navy blue blazer at home. She wanted to dance. And a little shiny navy blue and white flower patent leather Randaceru backpack, a tiny Miki Sayaka plaid pleated skirt, a floppy crimson red bow tie, and her navy blue Doc Martens 1460 steel-toed boots. She didn't want any broken toes. And then she put the platinum wig back onto her head. Yes, she said to herself as she looked in the mirror, I look like a magic girl. There was just one more thing. Patience rolled down her stockings so that they held just below her knees. She opened the perfume flask and placed 1 drop of the filter behind each of her knees, rolled the socks back up so they caressed her thighs but left an inviting 6 inches of skin exposed below her skirt, and then dabbed 1 little drop in the hollow at the base of her neck. Patience made certain to put some food in Brax's dish, check his water, and finally lock the door. It was a beautiful night. It was only a block to the bus stop. Half an hour later, Patience got off the bus at the park. Once when a railroad line came through River City, this park had been the switching yards for the train. Now it had become a green oasis in the city from which radiated a dozen rails to trails paths. And over on the other side of the park was one of her favorite dives, a converted railroad depot called Terminal. Terminal was a combination depot, the kind found in many small towns. It originally had a freight room, 2 passenger waiting rooms, an office for the depot agent, and 2 ticket windows. It was generally rectangular in shape with the long side parallel to the tracks. The freight room originally had a large sliding door on both the track side and the street side, but these had been converted to smaller Dutch doors where the bar staff could pick up drinks for the patrons. There was a covered open-air freight platform attached to the freight room that Terminal used in the summer for live music. The side of the freight room that faced the waiting rooms had been converted into a long bar. The depot agent's office almost always had a bay window for better visibility up and down the track. Now it was used for customers to pick up their own drinks on nights when a band played on the platform. The waiting room closest to the freight room bar was filled with tables, while the waiting room farther away had been converted to a dance floor with a small stage. On the opposite walls between the 2 waiting rooms were 2 little offices that had once been ticket windows. Now one was filled with sound mixing equipment for the PA systems. There was one for the little inside stage and another for the open-air platform outside. The second window was one of the reasons patients liked Terminal. Besides a remarkable jukebox, in addition to the complete soundboard of the 8/27/72 Beretta Oregon Grateful Dead show, soundboarded to track MR to DAT to Sonic Solutions to CDR to EAC to SoundForge Edit, which had been TAO'd into separate tracks for the patrons' dancing pleasure. Patients especially enjoyed the China Cat Sunflower into I Know You Rider from this show. The wonderful machine had everything, from the pagan folk of Fawn, the folk metal of Falconer and Corpulent Kalani, to the swirling symphonic metal of Incubus Succubus, Grady's cowboy metal, Fela Kuti's Afrobeat, Osibi Sa's Afro Pop, Ginger Baker Air Force's slamming fusion, the funk of James Brown, Betty Davis, Morris Day, and the motherfucking Time, and on the corner era Miles Davis, the Sufi trance of the master musicians of Jajuka, dubbed from Linton Kwesi Johnson, the scientist Augustus Pablo and Lee Perry, and lots of ska from Madness, the Specials, and Selector. Terminal offered a few of its knowing customers Swiss Recipe 100 milligram Thujaune absinthe. Patients loved her Vivert. With the Green Fairy calling, patients opened the door to Terminal and walked directly to the little booth where the Fornicier d'Absinthe plied his trade. Dr. Ordinaire, the only name anyone knew him by, smiled at patients and asked, "The usual?" Patients smiled and nodded. Dr. Ordinaire placed a shot glass full of absinthe inside a large brandy snifter. Then he reached into a little refrigerator and pulled out a pitcher of ice-cold water and poured the cold water into the small glass, which caused the absinthe in the shot glass to overflow into the larger glass. He added 3 or 4 ounces of water and then removed the small glass from the snifter. He handed the snifter filled with the peridot green liquid to patients, who lifted the glass to Dr. Ordinaire and swallowed it, all in one draught. Patients set the snifter on the little counter, and Dr. Ordinaire slipped her 6 quarters. "Put some music in the box, baby, please?" he asked. Patients grinned and grabbed the coins. She walked carefully and slowly, the absinthe was taking hold, over the jukebox and put the quarters into the slot and hit the buttons A3, I9, E7, N1, M1, A5, Enma, her cosplay persona for the evening. Before she had chosen her last selection, the speakers on the bandstand roared into Tanz mit mir. As the hurdy-gurdy and boron propelled her, patients twirled to the bandstand and found a tambourine. She danced the first song by herself, beating the goatskin on her hand and hip in turn. Fawn's music faded, and 2 seconds later, Grady's Ride Like Hell rolled and tumbled into patients like a tidal wave. Rumbling drums, thundering bass, and a sharp, piercing guitar found patients a dancing partner. A tall, thin, steampunk goth girl with long, flowing ebony hair that reached the bottom of her ass joined patients in the middle of the dance floor. She wore black calf-length leather lace-up boots with a row of chromed spikes up her heel, a black leather thong barely hidden under a 3-inch black leather belt with a holster on her right hip that held a body mechanic's hammer and an ebony handle and intricate Celtic knot engravings on the head, a bra of shining chrome chainmail, and a black leather padron on her left shoulder. Her left arm was covered in leather and buckles and straps and looked, at first glance, like a prosthetic. She wore a black beaver morning top hat and black lace swirling from the band and a raven's feather on one side. A pair of goggles, one lens of round but smoked glass and the other a series of lenses and gears and toggles, sat on the brim of the hat. She wore a patch over her right eye and a pair of silver Thor's hammer earrings. Even though the patch covered one eye, patients could see that this woman had made up both of her eyes before putting on the patch. Her left eye was heavily lined with kohl, which made her the brilliant eye that smiled at patients seemed even larger than it was. Her pale lips were the only part of her that were unadorned. Patients smiled at her new partner and danced around her. The goths spun and writhed to the music, bringing more than a few men in the bar to their feet as they watched her. Patients reached out and moved her hands close enough to touch her partner, but never did, until the music slammed to a halt and the goth fell into Patients' waiting arms. Patients gently kissed the woman and whispered, "Thank you." By that time, in a blare of horns, Fela Kuti's primal music filled the room, and the goths spun away. Patients walked to the bar and ordered a glass of water. "Keep hydrated," her mother had told her. As she was sipping on the water and grabbing the slice of lemon to suck on, a man walked up to her. He was tall, about 6 foot, with dark wavy hair, once pale skin that had been tanned, but not in the sun. He wore a fedora slanted to the side, a burgundy silk shirt that might have been just a bit too tight if it had been tucked in, a cloth belt carefully arranged to hang halfway down his left thigh, boot-cut jeans, and a pair of gray Skechers with no socks. Patience was almost sure that he was wearing Old Spice. "Sup?" he said. Patience decided to try to ignore him. "Sup?" he said a little louder. Okay, she thought, but you asked for it. Patience turned to face him. "Hi," she said. His eyes found hers. "Hey, baby, I'm DJ," he said. By the time he had gotten to telling her his second initial, his eyes had left hers and traveled to her boobs. "Pleased to meet you, DJ. You can call me Lolita," Patience said, wondering if the literary reference would mean anything to him. "Hey, Lola, what's happening?" DJ smoothly asked. "Can I buy you a beer?" "Thanks. Maybe later," she told him and waited. DJ stood beside her at the bar, nodding to the music, looking at the dancers. "Hey, are you dressed up like Sailor Moon or something?" he asked, swigging his beer. Patience was certain that DJ's acquaintance with anime characters were limited to his little sister's videos and some lurid hentai porn. Let's find out. "Do you think I look more like Anna Akunga or Ray Sailor Mars?" She asked after racking her brains for the name of the younger daughter in the hentai series. "Dunno," DJ replied, "but check out that goth chick you were dancing with." DJ looked down at her chest again before he said, "Look at those tits. Man, I'd love to get some of that." "She's pretty," Patience said, "and her cosplay is wonderful." "Well, I'd have that goofy costume off her before she knew it," he told her. "Hey, you want to get out of here and go somewhere?" Patience made up her mind more quickly than she had expected to. "Let me finish this drink and visit the little girl's room," she said, "and then we can go for a walk in the park." "Sounds good, baby. I'll give you something to remember." DJ laughed at his witty rejoinder. Patience walked back past the bar and found the Johns. She touched up her makeup and straightened her clothes. She would give DJ something to remember, at least for a few minutes. She walked back to the bar and past DJ, turning to him and crooking her index finger to tell him to follow her. He finished his beer and caught up with her by the time she had crossed the street in front of the bar and entered the park. She was walking leisurely down one of the paths when she felt DJ's heavy hand on her shoulder. She shook it off and was startled when DJ grabbed her ass. Patience stopped and turned to face the obnoxious man. "Hold on," she told him. He put his left hand between her legs, groped her, and said, "Come on, baby, you know what I need. You need it too." Patience squirmed out of his grip and said, "Okay, big man, I've got to make an adjustment first," and turned away. The big goon put his hands on his hips and almost drooled, waiting for Patience to move in some sexy way. That's when she turned around and kicked him in the balls. DJ dropped to the path like a sack of rocks. He gasped and fought for breath through the pain. By the time he could breathe again after a minute, he paused and puked up his beer, his dinner, his lunch, and some of his breakfast. He was on his knees, making noises that were somewhere between a moan and a wail. Somehow his pathetic mewling bothered Patience almost as much as had his touching her. She walked around beside him and kicked him in the side of the head, just above his right ear. He sprawled out face down. "That will never do," Patience thought. "Let me help you up, DJ," she said in a soft voice. She reached out and took his elbow and helped him up. He stood there swaying for a minute. When he had almost gotten his balance back, Patience kicked him in the knee, smiling that she heard something in his legs snap. DJ fell back, his legs splayed apart. Perfect, Patience thought. She nudged his left leg a little farther from his right, stepped back a step to give herself some leverage, and kicked him again in the groin, this time about halfway down the inside of his thigh. If she had done it correctly, she would have crushed his femoral artery and he would be as dead as a trout in 5 minutes. If she was off a little, he would have gained a crushed testicle, a bad concussion, maybe a subdural hematoma, a broken kneecap, and a thoroughly bruised artery. And if he survived, he could identify her as some skinny chick in a silver wig named Lola. But now she was hungry.